Throughout the long and brutal history of modern warfare, we've come to expect the worst of humanity: gunfire in the dark, ambushes from the trees, and machines built to destroy. But what if the battlefield holds more than just soldiers and steel? What if war itself is a doorway, a crack in reality through which something else slips through, something ancient, unknown, and watching? Today, we explore 5 terrifying encounters reported during real-world wars. They were never recorded in official files. You won't find them in biology textbooks, but those who lived through them swear they were real. From the jungles of Vietnam to the skies over Germany, from the icy lakes of Russia to the depths of the Atlantic, this is not a war between nations. This is something else entirely. In the dense, humid mountains of central Vietnam, American troops faced an enemy they were never trained for. It didn't carry rifles, it didn't speak, and it didn't die easily. They called them rock apes, a name that sounded like a joke, until you heard how seriously the veterans spoke it. It started during the defoliation campaign of the 1960s, when the U.S. military began spraying Agent Orange to strip the jungle bare. As the thick canopy fell, something began to emerge from the shadows. At first, it was only whispers, strange movement in the trees, small groups of figures seen briefly before vanishing into the brush. But soon, entire platoons began reporting the same thing. Large, hairy humanoid creatures, the size of men but covered in coarse fur, with snarling faces that weren't quite ape and weren't quite human. They moved in pairs or threes, hurled rocks with unnatural strength, and most disturbingly watched, not like animals, like something calculating. One soldier from the 101st Airborne wrote in his memoir, "They weren't Bigfoot." And they sure as hell weren't monkeys. They looked ancient, like they belonged to another time, and they didn't run when we fired warning shots, they just stared. Some tried to explain them away. Perhaps they were rare gibbons displaced by the war. Others believed it was collective stress-induced hallucination. But then why did the same sightings occur across different units, in different provinces, told by soldiers who had never met each other? There was no blood, no footprints, but the tripwires would go off, the flares would rise, and nothing would be there except for the heavy breathing just beyond the reach of the light. To this day, no official report confirms the existence of the rock apes, but among Vietnam vets, the stories still echo. Because in that jungle, there were many things they expected to face, but not that. By late 1944, the skies over Europe were chaos. Dogfights blazed across the clouds, engines screamed, and every pilot knew that any mission could be their last. But then something new appeared in the night sky, something no one could shoot down, outrun, or explain. They were first seen by the 415th Night Fighter Squadron, flying over the Rhine Valley. Glowing orbs of orange light, perfectly round, perfectly still, hovering in formation like sentinels watching from beyond the veil. At first, the pilots thought it was some German trick, flare traps, maybe, or a new type of aerial mine. But then they tried to chase them, and the lights vanished. Not fled, vanished, as if they were never there. Over the weeks that followed, more reports came in not just from France, but across Belgium, the Netherlands, and even southern England. Pilots saw the lights fly alongside their squadrons, matching their altitude, speed, and direction, sometimes circling them in playful, impossible patterns. But no matter what they did, they couldn't make contact, and they were never attacked. The intelligence community was baffled. No enemy nation had the technology, no weather condition could explain it, and the lights never appeared on radar. One of the most chilling reports came from Lieutenant Cran. While flying over Alsace, he saw a long, cylindrical object glowing faint red, wingless, noiseless, the size of a bus, keeping pace with his plane as if studying him. When he turned, it turned. When he climbed, it climbed. Then, without warning, it flashed bright white and shot into the heavens, leaving no trace. They began calling them Foo Fighters, a name borrowed from a comic strip, because no one had a better explanation. Declassified Air Force documents would later reveal over 250 sightings of these lights in less than a year. Some saw them as possible alien probes, others suspected time anomalies, but most pilots agreed on one thing. They weren't ours, they weren't theirs, and they didn't belong to this war. Unlike enemy aircraft, the Foo Fighters never attacked, they just watched, and somehow that made them even more terrifying. In the year 1274, the Mongol Empire, then the most powerful military force on Earth, launched a full-scale invasion of Japan. Hundreds of ships, tens of thousands of warriors. A storm of steel set to engulf a small island nation, but they never made it. As the Mongol fleet approached, the sea rose up in fury. Winds howled, waves towered like mountains, ships splintered and vanished beneath the water. And just like that, the invasion was destroyed, without a single arrow loosed from Japan's shore. The Japanese called it kamikaze, divine wind. They believed the gods themselves had intervened. But buried in both Japanese scrolls and Mongol war logs is something even stranger. Several soldiers on both sides spoke of seeing something in the waves, something enormous, something alive. They described a serpentine form rising above the storm, scales flashing like blades, and a roar so deafening it drowned out thunder. No one could describe its full shape, only fragments, a twisting body longer than a warship. Eyes that glowed like molten gold, and the overwhelming sense that it was not just a beast, but a guardian. The Japanese would later name it Ryujin, the sea dragon of divine judgment. Most modern historians dismiss it as folklore, a symbolic image meant to capture the chaos of the typhoons. But not everyone agrees. Ancient nautical charts from the Kyushu coast depict swirling symbols not found in other maritime traditions. And for generations, local fishermen have spoken of the boiling sea, a phenomenon where, even on calm days, the ocean would suddenly begin to churn, as if something massive was surfacing beneath. Sometimes, they said, a great shadow would glide just under the waves, silent, deliberate, and watching. There is no physical evidence of Ryujin, no bones, no photographs, no proof. But then again, how do you prove that something only awakens when the world is on the brink? Perhaps the reason the Mongols failed wasn't the wind, but what was riding beneath it. Deep in the forests of western Russia lies a quiet, unassuming lake, no more than 10 kilometers wide. Its surface is still. Its banks have overgrown, and its name is rarely spoken aloud after dark, Lake Brosno. The legend begins in the year 1240. A Mongol Tatar unit, riding high after a brutal northern campaign, stopped at the lake to water their horses. It was a routine moment until the water began to churn. Bubbles rose. The surface broke, and then chaos. Dozens of horses were pulled beneath the lake. Screams echoed through the forest. Something had struck from below and then vanished. The Mongols fled shaken. The Russian defenders, watching from a distance, called it a miracle. Centuries passed. The story faded into folklore until it happened again. In 1943, during the height of World War II, a German reconnaissance unit moved into the region. Rumors had spread that Russian troops were hiding supplies near the lake. The soldiers deployed an inflatable raft to scout the area. By morning, the raft was gone. No signs of attack, no debris. Just an eerie silence and a stillness on the lake that felt unnatural. Locals gave a warning the Germans ignored. When the air is dead, when not a single leaf moves, don't go near the shore. They call the creature Brosnia, sometimes described as a dragon, other times as a leviathan. Some say it's the last of an ancient Slavic water beast, awakened only when humans disturb its rest. In the 1990s, Russian researchers attempted to scan the lakebed with sonar. Every time they reached the center, their equipment failed. What they did capture were massive, unexplained disturbances in the water, too large for fish, too fast for currents. But nothing ever surfaced. To this day, no one knows what sleeps beneath Lake Brosno, only that when the water grows too quiet, something might be listening. On July 30, 1915, during the height of World War I, the German submarine U patrolled the frigid waters off the coast of Ireland. It was a routine mission. They spotted a British cargo steamer, the Iberian, and launched a torpedo. The hit was clean. The ship broke in two and began its descent into the deep, but then something impossible happened. As the wreck slipped beneath the surface, a massive underwater explosion erupted, likely from the ship's boilers. But what rose out of the spray wasn't just water and steel, it was alive. According to the official report, filed by Captain Freiherr Georg Gunther von Forstner, a creature was thrown into the air, its body twisting and thrashing. It was over 20 meters long, with limbs like flippers, a narrow crocodile-like head, and a long tail that whipped through the smoke. We watched it for roughly 15 to 20 seconds before it vanished back into the ocean. The crew stood in silence. These were trained military men, not prone to fantasy or panic. But what they saw didn't fit into any known category of marine life. Later, naval officers and naturalists speculated that what they had witnessed might have been a surviving pliosaur, a predator from the Jurassic period thought to have gone extinct 65 million years ago. Ridiculous, perhaps, until almost a century later. In 2012, a dead whale washed ashore near St. Austell, England. Across its skull was a single, massive bite mark, deep, wide, and curved. It resembled the jaw of a crocodile, but on a monstrous scale. No known marine predator could have done it. Local legends along the Celtic and Scandinavian coasts speak of a sea beast known as the whale eater, a creature long enough to rival a ship, with a taste for the giants of the sea. For centuries, these stories were laughed off as sailors' tales. But what if the U-28 incident wasn't the first sighting? What if it was just the only one ever recorded in wartime? What if something ancient, something that once ruled the oceans, never truly went extinct? It simply sank deep enough that we stopped seeing it, until war stirred deep. Soldiers have encountered things that do not fit into any known category. They weren't enemy combatants, they weren't hallucinations shared across continents, and they weren't myths, not when so many people risked their lives swearing they were real. So the question is, why do these creatures only appear in times of war? Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe human fear and chaos act as a veil, allowing things long hidden to slip through. Or maybe conflict awakens more than just hatred. Maybe it stirs the ancient. Maybe it draws attention, not from above, but from below. From the forests we've bombed, the waters we've disturbed, the skies we've torn open with metal and flame. And if these beings were watching us when we were at our worst, what were they waiting for? One war is over, then another begins. And perhaps somewhere in a trench, in a radar echo, in a sonar ping too deep to track, something is still listening, waiting not for peace, but for the next war.